Welcome to Good Dog Nation, the weekly video podcast that's all about having a good dog. Hosted by Michelle McCarthy, CDBC, CTAC, leading therapy dog authority and owner of Canine Homeschooling, and Kim Merritt, co-founder of GoodDogInABox.com, GoodDogPro.com, and founder of the URL Doctor. This episode is brought to you by GoodDogInABox.com. Reward-based dog training and dog bite prevention products for families with kids and dogs, and GoodDogPro.com, the online content subscription and community for dog professionals with reward-based dog training products, curriculums, and online courses to educate, motivate, and positively impact those that work with dogs. Now, let's join Good Dog Nation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Good Dog Nation, the video podcast that talks about all things dogs. I am Kim Merritt, co-founder of Good Dog in a Box and Good Dog Pro, and I'm here with my co-host, Michelle McCarthy. Hi, Michelle, of Canine Homeschooling. And we have as our guest today, Stacey Butler. So in 2016, Stacey left her career in nursing to follow her dream of opening and operating her own dog grooming business. She opened For the Love of Roscoe Dog Grooming in September of 2016. She is an accredited pet first aid and CPR through the Canadian Walks and Wags program. And last year, she became fear-free certified in their grooming program. So welcome, Stacey. We're so glad to have you today.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Here.
So let's start with, why don't you tell us how the whole thing with dog grooming came up, how you got interested in that, and how you decided to leave nursing to go into dog grooming?
Well, basically, I had a few friends that were dog groomers that I would just help out when they needed to, at Christmas in their busy season. But then I ended up, I have a special dog named Roscoe, and he had both of his hips removed. So we went through about a year and a half of surgeries and rehabilitation, and he's a Newfoundland dog, so he does require a lot of grooming, an excessive amount of grooming. So
Michelle and I have both been there, both Newfoundland owners. We feel your pain.
Now, I was able to do this at home to a certain point, but then when he got almost too big to fit in my bathtub, I needed to look at plan B. And that's when I discovered, nothing against any of the groomers in my area, but I couldn't find a grooming shop that I felt comfortable because of his sort of disability leaving him at. They weren't set up. The shops were not set up for dogs like him. So I finally, life is short, and we all say we're going to do everything later, tomorrow, next week when we retire. And I just said, if I'm going to fail, I'd rather have $5 in my pocket and be happy than 5 million and be miserable. So I just said, that's it. And I quit my job and I walked out and I enrolled in dog grooming school because that was my dream. So I completed the course and opened my own business 2 days after I got my certificate from the dog grooming school. In hindsight, I wouldn't recommend that. But anyways, it's worked out for me. And I always followed the fear-free mission from day one. I didn't know it was the fear-free mission. It was just the Stacey mission. And then I learned of the fear-free program. And then I impatiently waited because I knew the dog grooming certification was going to be available soon, but it wasn't yet. And then finally it was done and became available. And I immediately signed up and couldn't be happier to have it. I wish all groomers in the world had this course.
So tell us about it. I have known Marty Becker, the creator, I guess, of Fear Free for several years. I've had his daughter, Mikkel, on with different webinars and things we've done. And it's a fabulous program, started for vet clinics and has kind of migrated now to dog trainers and now groomers. So tell us, what does the Fear Free program for groomers look like? What does that mean to a pet owner?
Well, basically, the main focus of it, like all the other fear-free programs, is we try to do absolutely everything we can to reduce the amount of fear, anxiety, and stress to the pet during the grooming process. And that is the end goal. Dogs don't always love their grooming, and they don't have to love it. but they also shouldn't be ready for a nervous breakdown because of it. There's a happy medium there. I'm not saying that Fluffy has to count down the days till he goes to see the groomer. He's so excited, but he shouldn't be suffering a mild heart attack either by the end of it. So it's all about reducing the fear, anxiety, and stress as much as possible to make it bearable for them with the least amount of stress.
So give us some examples of how you do that.
Choice is a big thing. And, there's a lot of things that are right in front of you that are common sense, and you may not always see them until they're pointed out to you. So giving the dog a choice can make an entire world of difference during the grooming process. For example, when I take a dog, now the dog has a grooming loop around its neck. And when I take it in the back room to the tub, most dogs walk happily beside me until right when they get to that tub, and then the brakes go on. Instant fear, all four legs splayed out like I'm dragging them to their own death. And at that point, many groomers, not again saying anything bad about them, but they either pull on the grooming loop to force them into the tub.
Yep.
And if that doesn't work, if it's a 10-pound dog, many of them will just scoop the dog up and place the dog in the tub. But they're removing the dog's choice in those scenarios. So what I do instead, I hang onto the grooming loop. Now, I do not pull on it at all. I do hang on to it so that I'm not allowing the dog to back up and go away from the tub. But I'm in no way trying to force the dog to the tub either. And there are different ways depending upon the dog. Some dogs are very food motivated, and a little piece of liver, I can have them doing cartwheels in that tub in 4 seconds. Other dogs are like, I will starve to death before I get in that tub. So, whether you're using praise and love or liver, whatever the thing is that you find for that particular dog. Now, if that dog moves 1 inch towards me in that tub, I act like I won the lottery. Positive reinforcement, if anybody saw me, they'd probably have me put into the psychiatric unit, but I dance and I sing and I make such a big fuss that this is the best dog in the world for that 1 inch that they moved towards the tub. And in a few more minutes, they might move another inch. Now, when all is said and done, it depends on the dog. Sometimes it's 30 seconds. My longest was a Newfoundland dog, believe it or not. And it was 1 hour and 27 minutes. And I sat in the tub and he sat outside of the tub. Now, that's rare. It doesn't usually take that long. But the funny part of this story is after 1 hour and 27 minutes, the dog entered the tub and sat down beside me in the tub of his own free will. So that was a huge win, because you have to look long term about this dog grooming and the life of this. He's got 10 years left to be groomed. I would rather take all this extra time today and have him readily and happily walk into my tub than fight with him every 8 weeks and wrestle him into that tub.
Right. For the rest of his life.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when you remove somebody's choice, even a human, you think about it for a moment. If I'm asking you to come into a store with me and you're not really sure, you don't want to go, and I say, well, that's too bad whether you want to go or not. So I grab you by your hair and your jacket and I drag you into that store. Well, you're going to kick and scream and do everything in your power to get out of that store. And a dog's no different. You have to put yourself in their shoes.
Well, and kudos to you. I'm thrilled to hear that, because not every groomer would take an hour and 27 minutes out of their day.
I don't actually know any, and I do know a lot of groomers.
Well, and but I totally can understand. And I would have to guess that from that point on, did that dog willingly go into the tub for you?
Every time after that, he followed me and did not put the brakes on when we got to the tub. He walked in.
Wow.
Now, I know it was an hour and 27 minutes, but look at how much time I spent simply by getting that dog in the tub every single time he came to the shop.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a bonus. I know many people, time is money.
Yeah.
And And, without getting into this too much, but it also depends on your client. Because the big problem with practicing fear-free most of the time is not the dog, it's the human that brings the dog to the grooming shop. They need to be on board, and a lot of the times they're not. And at that point, your hands are tied.
So is that because they don't understand what fear-free is, or is that because they don't practice reward-based dog training at home?
I find sometimes it's a little bit of everything, but a big factor in it, the two factors that I've seen in my shop is money. As much as I love dogs, I can't work for free. So in the beginning, to get the dog used to the grooming, it takes time. I always tell people, if your dog is petrified to have their nails clipped and it's a 5-year-old dog, this didn't happen in one day. This has been building for 5 years, with extreme fear in this dog. And a lot of people believe that they'll bring the dog to my shop and I will clip the nails and there will be unicorns floating through the sky and everybody will be happy. And sometimes it takes many visits before I can get the nails trimmed. So that's many visits that they have to take time out of their busy lives to bring the dog to the shop. And they do have to pay every time.
Yeah.
Some clients would rather that I hog tie the dog, sit on it while it wails, and I just clip the nails. They just want it done and they don't care how I do it.
Can I ask, Stacey, how many clients, say someone really does have a dog that's really terrified and you're working with them, how much compliance do you get if you say to that client, in between these groomings, can you continue to practice these handling exercises and things at home? Do you get compliance with people?
I would say that's a tough one. I would say yes and no. Half of them do comply, half of them don't. The problem is even the ones they want to comply, but they have such difficulty at home because they're mom to that dog. And most of the time, dogs are like night and day from your home to my shop.
Yep.
They're completely opposite. When people come in and tell me how much Fluffy loves their bath, I'm like, oh, good God, this is going to be a nightmare. But if they come in and say they're all worried and they're all anxious and they're scared of what the dog's going to act and it might bite me because it hates its bath so much, I'm smiling because I know this dog is going to be an angel in my tub. I can almost bet you $100 on every dog that they're opposite from what the client tells me once they walk out the door.
Yeah.
So are there different exercises and things that you tell your clients to do in between?
Yes. If you're talking about nails, I find a big mistake. We all handle the paws. People touch the paws. You pick up the paws, which is all fine. I don't normally have a problem with a dog letting me touch its paws so much, but I tell them you have to kind of get in there, like spread their toes, move the fur back from the nail. It's all those little things that happen during a nail trim. It's not just simply touching the dog's paw. You have to go a little bit further in handling the paw than simply placing your hand on it.
Right. Because to do a safe nail trim, you have to be able to have a slightly firm grip.
Yes.
And it's one thing to pick up their paw. It's another to have to apply any pressure to that paw and hold on to it.
Yes, exactly. And how much is too much pressure?
Right.
Once it becomes uncomfortable for the dog, then you're at a whole new ball game. It's not just about the nails anymore.
Right.
And
then if we're talking about, say, a dog that has, a chronic injury, an orthopedic problem.
That's just what I was going to say.
Yeah, then we're pulling that paw forward. And so
Yep.
you probably need to sometimes even do a health intake from people.
Oh, yes. And that's another issue, too, is a lot of people, they don't inform you. I mean, you can ask questions, but a lot of clients aren't exactly honest and forthcoming with what they tell you about the dog. So when you get an elderly dog, now I'm not talking about any health problems other than just a senior dog that has some arthritis, just like you and I do, and I experienced this with I recently lost my Rottweiler, and he was 11 and a half, and his knees weren't good. Now, he let anybody in the world clip his nails his whole life. But the last 12 months or so, Nobody could get near him to cut his nails. He would growl. So I talked with my vet, and again, it's something that was so obvious and made sense, but I had not thought about. And she said, Stacey, the reason he's reacting this way is you're picking up his paw to trim the nail, you're bending the knee, it's hurting and it's uncomfortable. It's not the nail trim he's growling about. You're hurting his knee.
Right.
Well, then after I cried and felt horrible, so I continued to groom him and to cut his nails. And I found a way to cut his nails without picking up his paw. And he never growled at me and we had no issues. But something as simple as that can make a world of difference.
So for somebody, for our pet owners who, maybe this is new information. They've not heard of fear free before. They never even thought about, gee, I've got to be careful about, what type of a groomer and how they're handling my dog. Are there long-term negative effects to a dog that has been, and I don't want to say mistreated, because it could simply be handled by a groomer perhaps that just doesn't even know that they're causing the dog pain. Is there long-term bad effects?
Yep.
Talk about that.
The biggest one that I deal with is, and I'm not going to state any name, but there's a few places that are huge pet store chains that offer grooming. And I have so many clients that I deal with they've been traumatized and extreme fear from the dryers in the grooming salon.
Yeah.
And it is because at a big chain like this, where you can walk in, you don't need an appointment. They have multiple groomers and they have high turnovers with these groomers. So you can go 20 times and you might never have the same groomer. So the dog continuity of care goes a long way too. You need to get to know that dog. That dog will respond better to somebody that's handled it repeatedly than a perfect stranger. I mean, that's common sense too. So in these bigger grooming shops, a lot of the times dogs will be kenneled and kennels stacked on top of each other, and they're cage dried, which basically it's a big hose that attaches to the door of the kennel, and it blows forced air, circulates throughout the kennel. And they will put the dog in that kennel, and then they will walk away to bath 3 more dogs, which will then go in the kennels to be dried. Which, I'm not saying that those people are bad that do that. I personally, everybody does things differently. I do not cage dry. But animals have died being cage dried that weren't being watched. Like there was a Newfoundland in the States that overheated, was left in there too long and lost its life.
Yeah.
So if a dog is petrified of the noise of the dryer or the air going on it, and you put that dog in a little tiny box and you put the air on it so it cannot get away from that air, first of all, you want to talk about choice? Well, we just removed all of that.
Right.
The dog is in fight or flight mode and it can't fight. So some dogs will have no control and their bladder and their bowels will let go. And that's extreme fear. That's the worst of the worst. If you've got a dog that's scared that it cannot control its bladder or its bowels, that's pretty sad.
Yeah.
And nothing against the groomers. They're not standing there to watch the signs and the body language and how the dog's reacting. They might peek in. Oh yeah, the dog looks okay. Well, the dog is sitting there trembling in fear. And I've gotten a lot of those clients, and, I don't normally say anything, but when it's a big chain like that with the exact same scenario, after 50 clients, you start to notice a pattern, to the point where when I don't take really new clients anymore because I'm booked in advance so far. But when you have a new client come in and you can tell within 5 minutes of you clicking, or 50 seconds of clicking the dryer on, I can tell you where they took that dog to get groomed.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there is definitely a pattern, and it does make a huge long-term difference and can really affect how the dog goes about its grooming for the rest of its life.
So with somebody who is looking at getting a new dog, let's even puppies, they want interested in getting a puppy. What can a pet parent do with that new puppy from day one when they bring it home to get it ready to start coming to the groomer?
Well, you can't start too young, first of all. When you get a puppy, you don't have to wait. Start now. And I tell them they can do things at home. Most importantly, puppies have no attention span. None. Like, you might get 3 seconds out of them and then they're like squirrel.
Right.
So, people can't sit there for 15, 20 minutes and brush their puppy.
Right.
Well, of course, the puppy is going to fight them and then start mouthing them and run away and squeal, and it's going to be a nightmare. So, I slow and steady wins the race. Start off by just placing the brush next to the puppy. Let the puppy sniff it. In a couple hours, try again and maybe put it closer to the puppy, or maybe touch the puppy with the brush. You can't go slow enough. It's much better to go slower than to try to speed things up, and you're going backwards is what's going to happen. And I have meet and greets. So I have a lot of clients that will tell me we're getting a new puppy, and the puppy will say be 10 weeks old. So I usually tell them once they have the puppy at home for 2 weeks on average, that they make an appointment and they bring the puppy for the first meet and greet. It's about 10 minutes, if that, and I do not charge them. It's free of charge. They bring the puppy to my shop. I meet the puppy, I play with the puppy, I rub its belly, and I give it treats, and then they go away and they go home. Nothing is done to the dog, no dryer, nothing scary happens. It is all positive. Belly rubs and treats, and they're on their way. And then within a week or so, they come for appointment number 2. Now, when they come for that appointment number 2, and they bring that puppy back to my shop, the only association that puppy has with me in that shop is, that's the really nice lady that rubbed my belly and gave me treats.
Yeah.
So they're usually pulling their owner, running to the shop to see me.
Yeah.
So I have many of those appointments set up. And on the appointment number 2, they do pay. I don't give away everything for free, but the meet and greet I don't charge. So appointment number 2, they don't get a full groom. I introduce them to sounds and tools and a brush and the table. That's about all that's done. They don't get anything done to them. It's to let them familiarize themselves with the shop. I judge their reaction to things. Every puppy's different. Sometimes I turn a dryer on and the puppy does not even turn around to see where the noise is coming from.
Right.
So it's a process, and it's a slow process.
So, talking about grooming, obviously different types of grooming, different grooming needs for different breeds of dogs. And my sister, co-founder of Good Dog in a Box, probably the best advice she ever gave me and gave my family when we were trying to find a dog 10 years ago when my children were little. Think about the breed and what it was originally bred to do. Some dogs were bred to be fighters. Some dogs were bred to be draft dogs. Some dogs were bred to, hunt and do all these different things. Think about what the dog was bred to do, and then that will help you to choose the right dog. You have to think about, what their inherent skills and things are as far as training. We ended up with a Newfoundland, and I was very, very happy. I mean, they're one of the few breeds that part of the breed standard is their personality, and it's very docile and they're very wonderful. They're a grooming nightmare, though. So, in the whole process of picking a dog and figuring out what kind of a breed you want, even if it's a dog from a shelter, what do you say to somebody looking for a dog as far as what do they want to consider? Time, money, effort, the whole grooming thing from the professional point of view.
I'm not often speechless. I don't even know where to start with this. My dream would be that anybody that wanted a dog would have to fill out a very detailed questionnaire, and they would be given the dog matched for them, and they would not be allowed to see the dog. Because I believe that one of the number one reasons we have so many dogs dumped at shelters is because people do not research the breed they are getting, and they have no idea what they're in for.
Yes.
And the Newfoundland, for example, and I'm going to use them as an example because they are the funniest example I can find to use for anything that we can talk about. I have 3 of them. It's a full-time job, 24/7, outsmarting them. And I'm not ashamed to say I'm not always successful. They do require a lot of grooming. And this is part of the reason for this hairdo. I spend hours upon hours upon hours weekly with maintenance and grooming my 3 Newfoundland dogs. So when you're picking a breed of dog, everything's important, like you mentioned, about what they were bred for, what type of lifestyle do you live. You know,
Right.
if you want to eat potato chips on the couch for your life, you probably shouldn't get a border collie.
Right, exactly.
So that being said, you know, when it comes to the grooming part of it, and I shudder to say this, I'm going to use the doodle as the example, okay? Because I have so many doodle clients that were not told anything about their grooming needs. And then when they come to me, and they quite often want their doodle to be in a 3-inch long haircut, so they look like a teddy bear that stuck its paw in a light socket. The biggest, floofiest doodle you can imagine. That's what they want.
Oodles of doodles.
But double doodles, they're a thing. So anyways, well, they don't want to brush their dog at all. They want the dog left long, and they'd like to bring it to a groomer every 4 to 6 months. And the reality is, with a doodle, with generally most of them, they're a very curly coat breed, bred with the thickest coat they can find, and they put them together, and it's sort of this smorgasbord of like, surprise, what type of coat are we going to get? Most of it is all a nightmare. So their grooming is probably one of the highest maintenance groomings out of all the dogs I groom.
Wow.
Require daily brushing, every day. And usually it's a 4 to 6 week schedule that they come to me for a full groom. And my doodle prices, well, they start at $85. That's for a doodle to walk in the door and for me to say, hi, doodle. And it goes up from there. And let me tell you, it always goes up because they're always mad at me.
And let's just preface that comment by saying you are in Canada.
Yes.
So that's Canadian dollars,
that's
not
Canadian
US
dollars.
dollars.
And our money's worth crap, so that's a lot more money where you are.
But even still, even if you were in the United States, that you would still be paying.
Yes.
So I have a question related to, you know, whether it's a newfie who no one's doing maintenance in between grooms, or the doodle with these very complex coats.
Yeah.
How uncomfortable, I'll even say painful, is it for a dog who has been left 5, 6, 7 months without a groom, who's completely matted down to their skin? How much discomfort is that dog living with?
I can't imagine, to be honest, Michelle. I know that a lot of the time people aren't educated, and when I tell them, I almost feel bad, but I have to tell them they don't understand how painful it is for the dog when they're in that condition. You know, dogs walk on 4 feet, unlike us on 2. Every step the dog takes, they're moving 4 feet, 4 legs. And every single step they take, if you had a huge knot in your hair, a massive mat, and I grabbed it and started hauling you around the room by it, that's pretty much what they feel like with every step they take. It is extremely painful.
Yeah.
And, you know, that kind of brings us into one of my main issues I deal with, and that's neglect.
Yeah.
Which neglect is abuse.
Yes.
I know that you can call it what you want, but when you get an animal, you know, it's your responsibility to care for that animal and make sure it is healthy and in good physical shape. It's fed properly, just like when you have a child. So when you don't get the dog groomed for a year, we call them once a year grooms, and there's lots of them out there. And that dog is in excruciating pain. I've seen dogs that stop doing stairs and the owners think it's because they've got arthritis or they're getting old. They can't move. It's too painful. They can't go upstairs because of the mats. Yeah. So, and it is a serious case of neglect. And here in Canada where I am, there's nothing anybody does about it. There's nothing I can do about it. There's nobody I can call. Yeah. So you just have to try to educate the owners as much as possible and hope and pray to God that they listen for the sake of their dog.
You know, I think when when Kim and I first talked about having you on, we are so excited because of your background and your experience, but to really shed light on what the grooming experience is like for the dog, because I don't know that we focus enough attention on that this is happening to the dog.
Yes.
And I think we have to, we're so happy to have you share this because this is their experience, not ours.
Mm-hmm.
And we lose sight of that. Like you said, who do we report these things to when a dog is going for a year without being bathed and groomed, and the skin conditions that come from that, and the pain and the discomfort. And it's very disheartening, and it is education. And it should start with breeders, but it should also then transfer to the vet. How can a vet keep seeing
it should be a team effort with every pet professional dealing with the pet.
And the trainer, I can tell you how many students of mine, I'm reminding them, I'm referring them to groomers. Like, you need to start this process now, or I'll touch a dog and I can feel they're matted down to their skin.
Yes, yeah.
So
a lot of people think that if your dog doesn't cry out in pain, it's not in pain. Dogs are very resilient. They can be in severe pain due to matting walking down your driveway, and they're not going to scream in pain. It doesn't mean they're not in pain. So
Kim.
So Stacey, I want you to give us, for our pet parents out there, since we're at the end of the show, give us your recommendations on, as a pet parent, what do you want to look for in a groomer? How do you pick one? And what questions do you want to ask to make sure you've got the right one?
Well, for starters, now, not saying anything, there's groomers out there. Some of the best groomers in the world are self-taught. But as a whole, I would definitely make sure that they had training and schooling and some type of certificate that they went to school and became, got that certificate. I would also, myself, if it was me and my dog, I would want them to have and be certified in pet first aid and CPR. That's a big one. Anything can happen to a dog, whether it's the vet or the groomer or in your home. The person grooming your dog should be trained for any medical conditions that may arise as best as they can until they get them to the vet. Talk to people. Now, I realize if you're in a huge city, which I'm not, but read the reviews, Google the people. It's amazing what you can find out about people through Google. It's really a simple process. So check out their credentials and what people are saying about them. If you know anybody in the pet profession, whether it's a vet or a trainer or anybody, ask them if they know of any good groomers or ones to stay away from. Find that stuff out. And this one is a biggie, because this is how I am. And you might laugh, but trust your gut.
Yes.
There's so many stories of people that took their dog to a groomer. Something horrific happened, or it was a bad experience, and they tell me, I almost didn't leave him there, and I had this feeling. And for God's sakes, people, if you go, if you're dropping your dog off with a stranger and you have this feeling in your gut for whatever reason that this is not a positive, happy experience, don't feel bad that you're going to take your dog and walk out. You have an obligation to this dog. So even if I'm not saying the groomer's bad, but for any reason that you don't feel comfortable and you don't think this is a good match for you, just turn around and walk out.
Good advice. Good advice. Well, Stacey, thank you so much for joining Michelle and I today. This has been very valuable information for everybody out there that owns a dog and has to have it groomed. I mean, we all have pets that require grooming, and it's been really great information for everyone. So thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
If you'd like to participate in the rest of today's conversation for professionals who work with dogs and receive continuing education credits from participating organizations for listening, visit gooddogpro.com and subscribe today. Use coupon PODCAST to get 40% off your first month or annual subscription.